Welcome, Wargamers. In this video, we're going to talk all about how to paint fire.
Okay.
As I said before, we're going to talk about how to make huge flames, and for that I'm using my endless spell, the flaming skull thing from Age of Sigmar to do so. It is the biggest fiery model that I could think of to do a good painting tutorial. One thing I do want to say up front before we dive into the tutorial is this is a huge model, meaning there's more fire here than there is fire on most things. So when you're looking at the steps and techniques that I talked about here, understand that if things don't blend 100% perfectly, when you kind of minimize them to the size of fire that you actually find on models typically, like whether it's a brazier or a torch or something like that, those details tend to go away because it's so much smaller. In addition to that, there was an editing problem where my camera got messed up and it didn't record the first step. And so what that was I primed white and then did a layer of flash gets yellow. So when the tutorial starts, you're just going to jump into me. I'll explain kind of the details behind those decisions, but it will start with a primed white model with some yellow on it. So just kind of be aware of that. Sorry about that. I'm always refining these things. And if here's the tutorial that you want to see, leave in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Let's jump into that. All right, so here we are at the painting table, and a few things that I want to talk about. Like I said before, some of the footage was lost when they painted the yellow, but it's just one step. It's not super important at all. The things that are really important that I want to cover in this section is, one, you have to prime it white, because it really makes the colors pop. And that's super important for what we're trying to do, make a bright, vibrant fire. And the other things you want to do is choose the kind of fire you want to use. And this is what I mean. If you Google image search fire, you're going to get a wide array of what it looks like. Some are going to be heavy in the orange, reds, yellows, that kind of thing. And the reason for that is fire looks different at different temperatures. And that's really important to remember, that fire can look different across different models, and it would be totally fine provided that you're trying to emulate different types of fire, different things that are causing it, or different flammable things, because they would all burn at different temperatures. So you have to kind of decide your color palette what you want to do. For me, in this example, I'm going to go with a nice yellow and orange heavy one with some reds and blacks towards the bottom. And that's pretty much the fire I'm going to use. It's traditional campfire, right? A lot of it's yellow and oranges. Now, the next most important thing is the direction. By this, I mean, it's easy to always paint with the hottest part at the bottom, but that's not always true for our models. For example, with the flaming skull here, I'm going to have the skull, which I'm going to paint as actual skeleton skull colors. This is going to be the source of the heat, and so all of the colors are going to build from that direction. If we were to put a paintbrush down, this line is the direction that everything's going to emanate from. So it's going to be hottest and then kind of cool down the further we go, which of course means puts it at a diagonal angle because of where the skull is located on the model. So that's kind of something to keep in port. So you need to know what colors you're using, like what kind of fire you're emulating, and then also what direction is that fire going. It's not so much important for most things, but there are a few torches across certain models that, like, the character that you're painting is in motion, and so the flames go out a weird direction rather than straight vertical. So that's something to keep in mind. What direction is the fire going? So to that end, let's introduce the paints that we're using. And we have Flash Gets Yellow, which you can see on the model already. That's the one step we lost because of the video problems. Not a big deal. The next one is Troll Slayer Orange, which is going to be our nice bright orange. Then there's Wild Rider Red. Then we have Mephiston Red, followed by Abaddon Black. This is going to be a light little dry brush. It's totally optional. It just kind of makes like the smoky, billowy effect at the bottom. And at some point, we're going to do a wash of Cassandora Yellow to kind of give us the recessed shades that we want. So to that end, I grabbed my model, primed it white to get those nice poppy colors, and started painting Flash Gets Yellow. Now, as you can see, that is the direction my flame is going, with the skull being the source, moving outward. I painted most of the whole model. This part at the bottom I neglected to paint just because it's going to be red and black, so the yellow is not going to matter as much. When you are painting your yellow, whatever your heat source is, whether it's the bottom of a fireplace or obviously in this case the skull, you want to leave a few little flame licks of white. They do a really good job at GW of texturing fire, so you know where like little licks of flame are. Leave a few of them white, and the reason I say that is because you want some representation of the hottest point of the fire, which is going to be white. So that kind of breaks it up a little bit, kind of adds that little extra layer or something. And then from there, I literally just painted a thinned down Cassandora Yellow, nothing super special. And the next color we're going to jump into is our Troll Slayer orange. Again, just like with the dry brushing tutorial, if you haven't watched that with the warp glow effect, what I'm going to be doing is painting whatever the next color is, right? Paint half of what you just painted. So for example, all of this is yellow. I'm going to cut it in half and start the orange right in this area, the whole bottom half up to that midpoint of yellow. And so you do that, paint the whole thing orange, and then every once in a while, when you see a little textured lick of flame, go ahead and paint that, and that'll help us kind of blend these things together. And I'll show you what I mean right now. As you can see here, we've taken our Troll Slayer orange, did just about half of the total model surface area that we painted with yellow, and I even took my finer brush and went up and painted just a few of those licks to kind of bring it forward. Now, it does look a little bit rough as far as the transition right now, but once we put the Cassandora yellow wash on there, you'll see that it actually blends together pretty stinking well. So we're going to wait until this dries. We'll come back and we're actually going to do the reds next. We'll build those up going, again, half, so it's going to be something like that to the back, and then half with Mephiston red, and just kind of build those colors up and then give it a wash and bring it all together. Alright, so very quickly what I've done now is I went ahead, painted the orange, and then did Wild Water red from there to the back, and then did Mephiston red from that last little bit to the end there. Now here's the important thing about what I just did, and I did it very fast for a very specific reason. You can actually blend models on, you can blend paint on models if you just don't let them dry. So for example, I didn't let the orange dry completely. I came in with Wild Rider red, started there, and built backwards. And that really does kind of ease the transition of those two colors. If it wasn't for the camera equipment failing on me, the yellow would have done the same thing in the orange, but that's okay, we'll work on that. And then we would have done the same thing, and we did the same thing with Mephiston red. So now you can see there's a nice gradient there towards the back as it goes from the orange into Mephiston red through the Wild Rider red. So we're gonna let this dry here now. It's gonna dull just a little bit, but when we come back, we're gonna do our big wash of Cassandora yellow, and it's gonna really, I'm promising you, bring it all together. So let's wait for that. And here we are nice and dry. We're gonna take our Cassandora yellow, we're gonna start towards the top and bring it down to about the midpoint of the orange. It doesn't have as much impact here down here on the red just because it's such a harsh color. And I am super, I apply washes very liberally when it comes to this stuff. So don't be afraid to get in there. We're really aiming mostly, again, for the shadows, recesses, things like that, things that will add a lot of dimension. And that's where we want to focus. So we'll come back when that is done. And here we have our finished product after the Cassandora yellow has finished drying. So as you can see, we're just taking a look at this model. We have the nice transition, especially in the orange to the red, because it was all wet. We were able to blend it together a little bit. But there was a kind of a stark contrast between the yellow and the orange here. And there's actually, I was actually really super bummed about that, because I was like, oh, I kind of messed up this tutorial. I don't have a lot of models that require this much fire. But then I thought, you know what? It's a great way to teach people another fun little trick, which involves another wash, or shade, I'm sorry, called Fugan Orange. Fundamentally, what Fugan Orange and Cassandora are, they're just watered down other colors. And so this really is a powerful orange. And so what we're going to do to try and make that transition between the orange and the yellow a little more smooth is I'm going to lightly apply a thin down wash of it right in that area where the two meet, hopefully kind of bring the two together a little bit more. So like I said, I was super bummed at first, but I was like, no, this is a good teaching opportunity because it's going to happen to you. And I'm going to kind of, at the end of this video, consolidate all my thoughts on how to do fire, make it a little bit easier. Okay, so now the Fugan orange is on there. We just kind of put it in that little space between the yellow where it meets the orange, and you can see the transition is much better. So, like I said, I'm really glad that actually happened. As you can also tell, I went ahead and threw some of the base coats for doing the actual skull color, because frankly, this video takes a long time if I just paint one thing at a time. While all of that is drying, there's one more step that you can do to kind of add a little bit of dimension to this, and that is taking a Baden Black and giving it an extremely light dry brush on the very tips where the Mephiston red was. That's the billowing effect of the fire turning into smoke as it dissipates. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. Easy peasy. So that you can see that it's a little bit of depth there. And also remember, when we're doing that kind of billowing cloud effect, we got to stay in line with where the heat source is and where it dissipates. So these are all on the furthest point from the heat source, which is the top of the skull. So when everything dries and is finished drying, I'm just going to go ahead and finish painting up the actual skull itself, and I'll show you the final product. And here is that final product. Now I have it all set and done. A few highlights on the skull there, but as you can see, it's really striking, easy way to do fire. Now, one thing that I did say earlier, of course, the larger the model, there's very few models that are this much like fire in terms of actual surface area. When you kind of minimize this effect and kind of get it on a very small thing that you would see, like a torch or the flames inside the herdstone, for example, you'll see that it looks a lot more seamless. But I still think with the Fugan Orange to kind of cover up our mistakes there halfway through, the gradient from yellow to this black actually turned out fairly stinking well. And I know this episode is kind of jumbled around because of my technical difficulties and like that, but I'm just going to recap it very, very briefly. You're going to want to prime white. You're going to want to decide what your fire looks like in terms of the colors that you use, how much yellow to red to orange and so forth. If I wanted to have this be a very like a fire that's in the midst of dying, I would have actually had more red and black and pushed that way further up, because then it's kind of billowing smoke as it kind of sputters out. So keep in mind that fire looks different, and you can make it look very different model to model and still have it be cohesive within an army. In addition to the type of fire you want to use, you want to have your heat source and then have your colors flow from that. So in our case, it was the skull itself up here. And so if we were to turn it this way, this is how it would look like if it was an actual traditional fire where heat source is at the bottom, everything rises up to the top. And that's exactly how our gradient went until it broke off into smoke. Of course, with this model, it's a little bit different, but you get the idea. So you want to choose the direction of which your fire is moving. It's very important for where you're going to start to do your different layers and build up those different colors. So with those two concepts combined, that's really how you make any type of fire, no matter what colors you're using. Really what you want to focus on is whenever you do a color, it always covers half of what your previous one was. So we did mostly yellow, then half that with orange, half of what the orange was with the red, half of what that red was with Mephiston red, and so forth. And so that's how you build up those colors. When you're doing your blending, if you make mistakes, fire is actually more forgiving than people give it credit for, as you saw in this tutorial, where I messed up. I wasn't able to do wet blending because the yellow dried too fast for me because of the camera problems I had. So simple things like washes, Fugan Orange, and I don't have it with me right now, Cassandora Yellow make it incredibly simple to do those kinds of blends. I'm not sure how well the camera picks it up, but the blend from yellow to at least the Mephiston red is pretty darn seamless with the use of washes in addition to the actual paint colors themselves. So again, it is very forgiving. You just have to kind of get comfortable with the idea of using these washes. You can use Lamenter's Yellow as well. I've seen people do well with that, but that is not, it doesn't go into the recesses. It's more of a tint, if you will, rather than a recess shade. So it has different uses, but it can definitely fit into this. So if you have any questions about how to paint fire, whether it's different colors of fire, things like that, feel free to go leave in the comments down below. I'll be helping you there. And if there's any things that I didn't cover in this video, go ahead and ask those questions. If it's a real question that I just completely skipped, I'll go ahead and pin it to the top so anyone else can figure it out. If you wanted to even simplify this and do fewer paints, I would say if you got the yellow, your red, and Fugan Orange, you could actually probably make this with even fewer steps just by doing the whole thing yellow, then red, and then kind of building up that wash of orange in the center to bring those two colors together. It's possible, I've done it before, but it doesn't look nearly as seamless as having that Troll Slayer orange in the center. So, thank you all so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll be back next time with another one.
Hey Wargamers, Doug here. If you like the show, help the channel grow. Consider becoming one of my patrons over on Patreon. My patrons are vital to help decide the direction of the channel, and patrons of a certain level are automatically entered to win whatever battle tome I just finished reviewing. And I'll ship it anywhere worldwide. But more than that, it's an invitation to be part of a great group that wants to serve the wargaming community as a whole. Click the link in the description down below and you'll be brought over to my Patreon page, which is bursting with helpful information and will answer a lot of questions you may have. For as little as $1 a month, you can support me and make this channel possible. Thank you all so much for your consideration, and happy wargaming.